Hi, I'm Kirby Jordan from Kodiak in Glen Ellen, Virginia. Welcome to Along Those Lines.
This episode is brought to you by Power Intel, your distributor of choice for fiber, broadband, and infrastructure deployment solutions. With decades of experience, they help electric cooperatives power the future. Learn more at ptsupply.com.
Hi, everyone. This is a podcast about electric cooperatives, the work they do, and the challenges they face. I'm your host, Molly Christian. The partnership between electric cooperatives and the U.S. military goes back to the very beginnings of the co-op movement and has broadened and deepened over the decades. More than 140 co-ops now serve Department of Defense facilities or Coast Guard stations, and they own, operate, and maintain the power distribution grids at 31 military installations through utility privatization contracts. But the energy needs of our armed services are changing, creating an opportunity for co-ops to work even more closely with their defense partners. To mark Veterans Day this month, we look at a new series of defense summits the NRECA is hosting across the country, the first of which took place in Anchorage, Alaska in September. These events seek to tackle the military's grid modernization challenges and strengthen its partnerships with co-ops. NRECA Research is working collaboratively with the Department of Energy's National Renewable Energy Laboratory on this project. As part of the effort, NREL will create 2 case studies around grid modernization and national security with 2 NRECA members. Joining us to talk about the summits is Lauren Khair, NRECA's Senior Director of Energy Research and Resilience. We'll also talk to the heads of 2 co-ops that participated in the first summit, Kodiak Electric Association President and CEO Dan Menth and Tom Atkinson, General Manager and CEO of Kotzebue Electric Association. Lauren, Dan, and Tom, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us, Molly.
Lauren, let's start with you since you organize these defense summits. Just to kick it off, kind of explain the partnership between electric co-ops and the military.
The cooperatives have a long history of working with their military partners, whether it is by providing power supply or providing, a partnership through a utility privatization contract where the cooperative owns, operates, and maintains the distribution grid, or is it through a utility energy services contract? Cooperatives have worked with their military partners for decades. Usually, not always, but usually the military base is sometimes the largest load on a cooperative service territory. And so that cooperative likes to be the trusted energy partner for their military base, station, installation, annex, radar station, what have you.
And there are a fair number of military sites and bases that co-ops serve. Do you have a number of roughly how many of these sites co-ops provide electricity to?
So approximately 145 different cooperatives serve a military base or Coast Guard station. It's about 125 for DOD. You're thinking Army, Air Force, Navy, Space Force, and then about 25 for the Coast Guard. It is the coast, and rural America is not always on the coast, so a little bit less with the Coast Guard.
So we serve a lot of these sites, and NRECA recently launched these defense summits. Tell us what these gatherings are for, why we're doing them, and kind of what they're aimed at accomplishing.
So the point of the summits is an opportunity to convene people, cooperatives and their installation partners, whether it's the Department of Public Works or the Energy Office. They have these discussions about energy requirements, mission growth, things like that. But we wanted to be a little bit more intentional and bring the cooperative and their military partner together to have a focused conversation about energy growth, energy demand. Talk about, hey, cooperative, what is going on in your service territory? What are your energy challenges and opportunities? And the same with the military, so that they could find win-win reliability projects to work on together or resiliency projects. As I mentioned, cooperatives are the trusted energy partner, and sometimes having space to have these very focused conversations is hard. And so bringing everyone to a room so they can have these conversations actually, out of it came 6 different project ideas for the different installations across Alaska.
And kind of how are these events structured? How does it kind of bring everyone together? How do they kind of work to identify issues and decide on solutions?
So the regional defense summits, there's going to be 5 of them. This was the first one. We believe that Alaska should be the first one just because of the focus of the administration and of others on Alaska. The idea is that these will be a minimum of 2-day events. The first day will be the summit, where we'll have a conversation about grid modernization and where the energy challenges are focused. We'll be doing that in conjunction with our partners, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, or NREL. And then throughout that day, we'll also have small groups talk about some of those win-win reliability projects to break kind of down into the cooperative installation group and say, what's going on at Kodiak Coast Guard Station? How can the co-op help you, kind of thing. Second day is meant to be a cybersecurity workshop. We have partnered with the Idaho National Lab to provide cyber strength to our members, which provides a hands-on exercise about some of the tactics, techniques that bad actors do in the cybersecurity space. So they're about 2 days. Sometimes they'll be 2.5, depending on what the base has to offer.
On that note, when and where are the next summits, Lauren? What's the schedule going forward?
So we're going to do 5 of these in regional defense summits. Like I said, Alaska was the first one. The next one is going to be in Fort Bragg in North Carolina in 2026. We think April. And then the next one will be at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. We're thinking May. And then after that, we'll be in Texas and in Colorado in 2027. So Texas will be in 2026 and Colorado in 2027. And we will wrap up at NREL's campus in Colorado.
Excellent. And I know it's kind of early days. We just had our first one. These are going to stretch out for over a year. But do you expect these events to kind of continue? Is this something that NRECA could seek to kind of continue? Or do you think there are other ways we kind of might work more with our military partners?
Yeah, I think that we've been doing this kind of in fits and starts in the NRECA's defense program, but I think that there is a lot of eagerness and willingness to want our members to want to talk to these folks in a more meaningful way. So we'll be doing a half-day pre-conference at Power Exchange, Take Advantage, in Nashville on March 8th in the afternoon. So if you do serve a military base or Coast Guard station, we'll be learning more about how the cooperative's role in national security and how they can contribute and continue to be that trusted energy partner.
Great. And Dan, I know that Kodiak Electric serves a Coast Guard site or maybe multiple sites on Kodiak Island. Tell us a little bit about how you work with them and kind of the services you provide and just how they're kind of a partner to your community too.
Yeah, actually the base that we serve, it's one base. It's the largest Coast Guard base in the country. And so they have both, the air and the boats. Just a little bit of the background as to why they're so important to us. Up in Kodiak, we are an islanded community and we have an islanded electric grid. So we generate, transmit, distribute to everybody, right? We can't pull off the rail belt as an example. The Coast Guard is roughly 20% or more of our business, right? So they are our single largest consumer. And what they do has a direct impact, not just on our utility, but on our community. So it's something that we talk a lot about here in Kodiak, that, it's not just a customer. If they're making decisions, they're affecting the rest of the, whether it be the fishing industry or the schools or the hospitals. They have a major impact that trickles through the entire small community.
And Tom, kind of a similar question to you. I know that Kotzebue serves Air Force and National Guard sites in your part of Alaska. Tell us how you work with them and also, again, kind of how they affect the community, not just in terms of energy demand, but sort of what kind of a partner they are generally.
Sure. Kotzebue has a long history of working with the Air Force, beginning back in the Cold War area during the 1950s. And they've had at least 60 full-time personnel stationed up here in multiple radar sites for detection and defense. And over the years, as we've gotten past the Cold War era into the 1980s, they kind of dismantled a lot of that, but they still have one working long-range radar site up there that we supply power to. The National Guard also has a hangar up here that we supply power to, and it is used by the Coast Guard seasonally. So those are two ways that we interact with the military.
Let's pause here for a word from our sponsor, and when we come back, we'll look at the energy challenges that Kodiak and Kotzebue Electric discussed at the defense summits.
Power Intel, your distributor of choice, is proud to support electric cooperatives with the products and expertise needed to expand broadband and strengthen infrastructure. For communication networks of every size, They deliver what you need when you need it. With industry-leading inventory and a commitment to service, Power Intel keeps co-ops connected and communities moving forward.
I'm Rose Lopez from Southwest Arkansas Electric Co-op in Texarkana, Arkansas. You're listening to Along Those Lines.
Welcome back. Next, we'll hear more from Dan and Tom on the grid solutions they explored at the Defense Summits.
And Tom and Dan, you both attended the Defense Summit in Anchorage, which was our first one. Tell us about your experiences there.
Sure. I guess I'll jump in first and just say that one, other than Lauren, of course, really, trying to make sure that we were there, which I really appreciate. Kodiak right now is in the early phases of a utility energy services contract. So the timing couldn't have been better for us to really get into a room and understand and be able to have conversation with, whether in this case specifically it's the Coast Guard, but, the other side of the table, the military folks. I will say one of the big takeaways for me, and this came out of the group discussions, was the communication challenges that we have, and getting, I'll just use the Coast Guard because that's what, specifically we're dealing with here in Kodiak, is how does KEA, how does the cooperative understand the Coast Guard and how they have to do business, right? Their procedures and whatnot. And then vice versa, right? Having the Coast Guard understand, well, this is a cooperative and they have a board and this is how they need to make decisions. I thought there was a lot of really productive conversation in that group, trying to just get everyone to understand each other's kind of business model and how to move forward, right? There's some really big projects coming in Kodiak and around across the country. And having those two, the big players understand each other's game plan is going to be key to success, in my opinion. But I did think that was one of the best things that I personally took away from it, was the increased communication and the desire to keep the communication rolling after the summit was over.
Yeah, and Tom, how about you? Kind of what was your impression of the event and kind of what the big benefit of it was?
Well, we have been talking with the Department of Defense entities even prior to this, for more than a year prior to this. And we've been working on what they call dual use projects, where infrastructure projects like energy projects can be developed within the community that serve not only the military, but also the community as well. And that way you don't have duplication of efforts and greater efficiency in developing these types of projects. But what we did find that it was very difficult for us as a cooperative to interact with the military because of how big they are, how many different departments and how many different people you have to talk to. So when the NRECA came up with this idea and contacted us, I thought that's exactly what we need. We need someone to facilitate this for us. So we were very excited about that, and it was a great event. It was an opportunity to talk to defense entities in the state and also federally as well. We had participants from as far away as the Pentagon, and it's a really rare opportunity to be able to interface with those people and talk about projects that people work on together. Having the NRECA there with their experience and help in doing all that. So it was, at least in my opinion, a huge opportunity for cooperatives in our state to be doing that, and it was great to be a part of it.
And you kind of mentioned communications being one of the challenges. Were there also kind of more technical, like maybe grid type projects or grid modernization issues you discussed, in addition to kind of wanting to improve the communication? What were some of the energy kind of infrastructure related issues you guys discussed?
Kodiak specific issues, there's a couple that have been ongoing, call it prior to the UESC contract coming along. One of which was the OPCs, or the offshore patrol cutters. We've been told that they're coming, they're being built. There's just some delays there, but they're going to have a pretty substantial impact on our grid, because our understanding is, right, their shore towers can all be electric. They're building a new wharf right now to house them. So having conversations, as Tom had mentioned, right, I mean, with folks that were here from DC and the Pentagon type area, it really helped understand the timing and some of the delays. And hey, I'm going to give a quote from one of the gentlemen. They said, well, we don't really like to tell you exactly what's happening because that, if you go out and spend money and then it doesn't happen, we feel bad, which is perfectly understandable. And I probably shouldn't say that they feel bad, right? They want to avoid any lost revenue, any lost spending. So opening up that line of communication to say, hey, this might be coming is what KEA, as an example, or Kodiak Electric could then say, well, in our construction work plan, if there's an opportunity to prepare for this potential, we can take advantage of that, and we're not out anything as much as just able to identify, some of the infrastructure challenges that in today's world after COVID and whatnot. The lead time on transformers, that as an example, are 18 to 24 months. So that's just an example of like the offshore patrol cutters, and of course the big one that KEA is dealing with right now is the UESC contract. The Coast Guard's looking at converting out one of their fuel boilers that they use to produce steam for the base to electric. So that'll be a major influx of load for our system. We are proud that we're 99% renewable, and when you put another 2 megawatts or so on our system, what we're doing now on call it a similar track is we're looking at adding additional wind power to our Pillar Mountain wind site. So completely separate from the process, but it's having a major impact on our cooperative to make sure that we can maintain that 99% renewable status as we bring a lot more load on.
And this summit kind of gave you that chance to talk with them more fully in maybe a way that maybe hadn't happened yet, or just kind of helped you guys think ahead?
It helped. Yes, it helped to reiterate on a bigger scope. We've had kickoff meetings and whatnot here locally with a lot of the Coast Guard personnel, and they've heard Kodiak Electric talk about our renewable status. And I will say that the Coast Guard is a great partner. They are very sensitive to making sure that we maintain that renewable status. What the summit allowed us to do was tell that story again to a bigger audience, to really get everybody on board. And I think most, whether it be Homeland Security, Coast Guard, or DoD, there's a lot of turnover, and making sure that message is consistent amongst a lot of people. When there are people that retire or move off to another base, the message is still there. It's not being forgotten. So that summit was very helpful with that, getting that bigger audience.
And Tom, kind of what were the issues you identified for your co-op and kind of working with the military, and what sort of solutions or kind of progress did you make on them at the Defense Summit?
Well, I think one of the military's biggest questions with communities in the rural Alaska and for us, that means being off the road system. I know for Dan, they're off the road system too. But the native name for our community is Kikikta Group. It's a little harder to say than Kotzebue, but that means almost an island. And we are islanded. There are no roads or transmission lines going in or out of our community. You can only get here by flying in. And the military's questions to us were, if we had to deploy up there, do you have the infrastructure to be able to support us bringing a military presence up there if needed? And in today's world with current geopolitical events and also increased shipping into more ice-free waters around our areas during the shipping season, this is a very valid question, a very valid concern. And the, answer to that is that no, we don't really have in a lot of rural communities the infrastructure developed that we need to support deployment if they have to come up here. So again, that gives us the opportunity to discuss this. And we are working with U.S. Air Force now on a proposed project to provide a 4 megawatt battery to be redundant power for their existing long-range radar site that they still operate up here. And that would also serve community communication assets like radio towers and cell towers that are also located in that area. So that is one project that we have been working with them on, which we gained a fair amount of traction at these meetings. We're having continuing discussions, and I'll have to say the summit really helped facilitate on that particular issue.
So it sounds like the discussions there were very helpful for you guys. What was your impression of the Department of Defense participants and what they thought of the event? What were kind of their takeaways, or kind of what did they see it as helpful as well, or kind of what did they tell you?
I'll go first. We sent out a survey because it's always good to survey folks to say, what'd you think of the event? Quite a few DoD people responded and DHS. And they found it really valuable. I think there was an opportunity for them to learn about what cooperatives can offer as well and what cooperatives have been doing. I've kind of started to say that if you can do it in Alaska, you can do it in the lower 48. And so, I think that they learned a lot about the capabilities of our cooperatives and how willing and able they are to help their communities and to increase the reliability and resiliency of the grid. So some of them have suggested that they want to send their other colleagues to the other summits, which I think is always a great thing. The fact that they even completed the survey is always a great statement to that. So I think that they got out of it as much as our cooperatives did. And I think that they're excited for the next steps as well, because no one wants to see good ideas die on the vine.
And Tom and Dan, what is your advice if you were to provide guidance on future defense summits? What do you think are ways that we could help co-ops and military partners work more together? What's kind of your takeaways from the summit and just different ways to increase that collaboration?
My takeaway is really the epitome of what the summit was. What can I do as the CEO of Kodiak Electric to increase the communication between our cooperative and the Coast Guard base? And like I said, we have the UAC contract right now that we're in the preliminary stages of, which has forced us to open up that communication. And that I guess my big takeaway is it shouldn't have taken that to get that communication there. Let's be more involved. I'll be spending more time on the base, making sure that I'm reaching out to the folks there as there's turnover. Well, one of the things that we did talk about specifically at the summit was we have a Coast Guard liaison that does sit on our board, and just increasing the amount of their participation, right? Not just taking information from our board meeting and bringing it back to the Coast Guard, but being able to share it. And I know it's difficult, right? There's things that they can and they can't share for security purposes, but that's something that we're trying to get around as well and say, well, can you give us information that would be useful without causing any kind of security issues? So again, my takeaway is exactly what the summit provided, just opening up more communication and, in a way, almost having that first name basis type of a relationship with the folks. And in Kodiak, with the Coast Guard being our largest consumer and over 20% of our business, we really should have almost like a key accounts person that's working with them a lot, and we haven't. And that's something that I'm going to make sure that we have moving forward, is that open communication with the Coast Guard, with or without the UAC contract. It's just good business.
And Tom, kind of what was your view of like a better way to work together with the military? Or what do you think is like the next step after having had this defense summit?
Just continue to communicate with them. This is a huge opportunity to create a win-win situation for communities and the military to work together. And that is hugely important. And we need to continue to focus on communicating with the military on what our infrastructure needs may be, which may dovetail with what their needs are. And it makes no sense for both of us to be working separately on this issue. There's close to 900 electrical cooperatives throughout the United States. And this is a huge opportunity for us to leverage our knowledge and our experience and help the military. And in turn, they can help us as well. So again, another huge opportunity to work together.
And Lauren, we looked at how Tom and Dan's co-ops, kind of what their individual challenges were, but like, were there broad issues that all military partners and all co-ops at the first defense summit discussed, whether it's improved efficiency, technologies they're more interested in looking at? What were some of the big topics of the day?
So I think it's an all of the above conversation, right? So I think what Tom said is accurate, right? The military is a very large organization. Figuring out who to speak to is like half the battle. And so our defense summits cut through that red tape and provide them the ability to be able to talk to the people that make the most sense for their installation. In addition to that, communication. The summits were a great opportunity to remind people that like energy is always evolving. The energy industry is always evolving. The needs are changing. The technology is changing. What made sense, 10 years ago doesn't always make sense. And so having these consistent, proactive communications, like Dan said, is very important to them. I think they talked about, some Alaska-specific needs. Alaska is going through a lot of challenges right now. And so there was a lot of discussion about generation needs, capacity needs. Is there new and different ways to meet those needs? We had a good conversation about the small modular reactor pilot that's going on in Eielson Air Force Base to learn more about that. And so I think it's all hands on deck and old tools on deck in Alaska to meet the need, to meet the mission, and to make sure that the warfighter is protected and that national security stays where it is. And our co-ops are ready to meet that challenge.
Great. And Lauren, how should co-ops get involved in these defense summits if they'd like to sign up or somehow participate? What would you tell a co-op if they're like, this sounds great, sign me up?
More than likely, I would tell them to go ahead and reach out to me directly. If you, they're regional, Molly, so we are breaking the states up depending on where you are located to have you kind of go to one summit versus the other. So we have all 50 states broken up into 5 summits. So if you are in a state, that hasn't been reached out to yet, we'll reach out to you. But like for North Carolina, it'll be Virginia and New Jersey and Pennsylvania and the states kind of near it. And then we'll kind of work around the whole United States that way. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me or my team. We're more than happy to involve you in these summits going forward.
Excellent. A great sort of new event that I think will really help NRECA co-ops and their members work even better. And like you said, strengthen national security. Thank you guys so much for joining. And yeah, looking forward to future summits and hearing what comes from that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Molly.
And thanks to you, our listeners, and our sponsor, Power Intel. For more on this and other podcasts, visit us at electric.coop. Until next time, for Along Those Lines, I'm Molly Christian.
I'm Paige Eaton from Wood County Electric Cooperative in Quitman, Texas. Thanks for listening to Along Those Lines. Subscribe and rate us on your favorite podcast app.